Welcome to another episode of the Do Good Work podcast. Today, we're going to be shifting gears and shifting our perspectives to focusing on the good. And before we dive into everything that I have a special guest with me today. Her name is Barbara Vercruysse. She's a mentor, business coach, public speaker, and she's faced several, not just one, but several life-changing challenges, including, stage 4 skin cancer. So we're going to dive into her story and how she still sees the beauty in difficulty and how she is still one of the most vibrant people I have met. I met her in person at an event, and she is not only genuine, but she actually means what she says in regards to positivity, and she lives it out. And just spending 5 minutes with her, you will feel the difference as well. And I hope you feel that in our conversation today. A little bit more about Barbara. She does run a very successful 6-figure business. But for the last 18 years, she's done that, but she shifted gears. And what her gear now is to focus on her true passion of guiding people into deep transformational work. One of her clients does include BMW. So Barbara does know how to work with small entrepreneurs as well as larger corporations, and she's amazing at it. But without further ado, Barbara, thanks for being on.
Yes, thank you, Raul. It's a joy and a pleasure to be here with you tonight.
I appreciate that, Barbara. Where are you calling in from today?
Belgium. So I'm living an hour drive from Brussels.
From Brussels. Okay. Awesome. Well, thanks for being on with this whole online ecosystem. But Barbara, right now, I don't know if you saw a post that I put recently. It's essentially, it just said 2 words or 3 words: focus on good, like the good that's happening right now. And even in the midst that we're going through, if it's COVID, if it's business, if it's stress, if it's family, there's still good happening, right? Because good, in essence, or something that's bad, is a lack of good. So therefore, good must always exist. And you've faced some difficult challenges in your life. Can you talk to us how you actually went through them and how you're still here today with a beautiful smile?
Well, one of the biggest challenges, of course, was being diagnosed with a stage 4 cancer. It's already 17 years ago. I have to count. I was 32 years at that moment. And the youngest of our 3 children was 8 weeks old. So we were having 2 toddlers and a baby. And I was running the construction business since 5 years then.
Oh, wow.
So you can imagine being diagnosed with a stage 4 skin cancer. The doctors didn't expect me to survive more than 6 months.
Wow.
Which was, of course, it was like a bomb, like a super shock in our lives. Especially for my husband, my parents-in-law. And from, you could say, the first night in hospital, I think that was the biggest shift that I made. I was laying in bed, and it was the first time that I was without one of the children. So I was all alone in that hospital bed, and was, like missing them physically. When you have toddlers and babies, you always have the warmth and like for a minute I started crying just because I was missing them. And then all of a sudden I was thinking, okay, they are super, super young. They are surrounded with love where they are now. The parents, they were with my parents and 2 others with my parents-in-law. They do not realize what's happening right now. They're too young, and they are very, surrounded by warmth, care, and love. So I put that out of my mind, and I was thinking, okay, I'm laying here in this hospital bed. I will have surgery tomorrow, my first of several surgeries. What can I do now? What
Mhm.
is the most helpful thing in this situation that I can do for myself? And I knew I had control over one single thing.
Mhm.
It was my mind, my attitude, my thoughts. And I decided to only let into my mind the thoughts that would be helpful, because in allowing or in going into, you could say, the lane of depressive thoughts, of dramatizing, I would weaken myself. And that was something that I absolutely did not want to do.
Mhm.
I did not want to weaken myself. So I was thinking, okay, physically, I'm going to surrender to the doctors. I'm in good hands. There are several doctors working on my case. I will have surgery, chemotherapy. So I asked my husband to bring books about cancer survivors. So from the next day on,
Oh, wow.
I read I read books about cancer survivors, dedicated, like making that promise to myself. I have to see my kids grow up. I want to see my kids grow up. They were so young, and I was very committed. So I think in every situation in life, whether you're faced with a health challenge, a business challenge, a relationship challenge, there's always one thing we have control over. That is our response to the situation. Are we going to act fear-based and weaken ourselves? Are we going to act, you could say, faith-based and more confidence-based and start from that place and empowering ourselves? You could say, like, is this an empowering thought? Is this a disempowering thought?
Mhm.
And of course, it needs a certain level of awareness. I think the first step for people who even working with a coach or with a mentor or going into personal growth
Mhm.
is to know about your thoughts. You are not your thoughts. We can, like we have thousands of thoughts during a day,
Mhm.
and we decide on which thoughts we focus. Of course, we have default patterns, default thought patterns, where we are more like drawn to
Mhm.
than others. So if you have a negative habit of thinking always the worst, always going into panic, you lose clarity. You lose clarity about your situation. And most of all, Raoul, even if I would have died 6 months later, I
Mhm.
would never have wanted to spend my last 6 months in depression, in dullness, in being a burden to others, in crying.
Wow.
No. It's, even if it was my 6 last months, I could have, like, just enjoy every moment.
That's really strong. And if, excuse me if I'm looking away, I'm writing, I have notes
Yeah,
already,
I
two
know.
and two notes already about this. This is incredible, Barbara. So you mentioned it quite a bit in regards to the word helpful. But when
Mhm.
you went to helpful, you also started first, what can I control so that others around me may be better? So can you talk a little bit more about what it means to you, for you to be helpful, as well as why books? Why was the first thing you did the next day was immediately go to books of survivors? I'm really curious how that thought process went.
Well, I'm an avid reader, as you know. I
Mhm.
love to read. And I knew I was going to spend some time in hospital.
Mhm.
And that was 2003.
Mhm.
So smartphones were not yet there yet. We were just, and I was so really looking for things that could empower me. You have to know that my husband was really panicking. He was crying, like the first 3 weeks he was
I mean, I
crying.
think I would be too, to be honest with you. If that was me and my fiance, that'd be the same.
Yes. And he was seeing himself end up as a widower with 3 children. My parents, who were in their early 50s, like only a few years older than I am now, were crying also the entire time. Especially my parents, they would lose their oldest daughter so soon. So I had to stop everybody. I really had to stop and say, God. I'm still alive. I'm not dead. The funny thing was that I didn't feel ill. I had a black spot on my knee who had started bleeding, and there was like liquid coming out. And apparently it was there all my life. And I hadn't been looking after it because I'm not like a doctor person. I do not panic. Yeah. It was my husband who at a certain moment said, now you go. It doesn't look right. Like that black spot, it doesn't look right. So I didn't feel ill. Of course, after the surgeries, and especially that year of chemotherapy, I had like severe physical challenges. But even then, at certain moments, I was so weak that I couldn't get out of bed. But I wanted the connection with my kids. So what would I tell my husband? Or we had like a help in the house, a household help, a lady who came to help us. I would say, like, I'm sitting at the edge of the bed. You lay the clothes of the kids next to me. So, and she would put the kids in front of me, and I would put the clothes on, just to feel like I still participated in life. And just like that simple act, which is for most people, it's an act, you could say, a boring act even. People don't pay attention anymore. It's an everyday act.
It's the Monday, the everyday.
The Monday, yeah. And just being able to do it, it was such a victory for me, because I was feeling so ill and exhausted. Even just dressing my kids was a victory. And it was a moment of intimacy with my kids. I was doing something that a mom does. Like a mom dresses her small. And it felt me connected with my momness again.
To your identity, to who you are, and also participate.
Yes.
That's huge.
And as little as possible, identify myself with a cancer patient. Wow. When people would come and visit me, I would very often say, they would say, how are you? How was the surgery? I would say, I will not talk again about how the surgery went. Because if it was a very hard experience, I would be repeating words which were painful for me. And I didn't want to repeat that verbally again and again and again, how hard it was after surgery. So I would say I will not, because it exhausted me. And some people just come to visit you like a kind of, oh my God, Barbara, how are you? Are you okay? And, and over making the situation like even more dramaful as it is already. So I really took distance. I learned very much about which people to surround myself with.
Wow.
And be very mindful about surrounding with those who recharge my batteries.
And you mentioned something really important earlier, because this is a physical state, right?
Yes.
But sometimes for us listening, or for you listening right now, you may be either walking or out or healthy, but you may not be thinking, what are the thoughts, or what are the experiences, or what are the people that empower me? And it's not like some mumbo jumbo, like Lulu La La Land empowerment. It's more like that strengthen me, that help me be my best self, or help me be in tune with my identity. And what are those thoughts that are weakening, that take me away, that have me think in fear and have me uncertain? And you experienced that directly, because it was physical, right? There's no avoiding it.
No. It was really physical. I could feel like if I would talk like for half an hour
Mm-hmm.
about how the chemo went and how, like my hand was blue from all the needles. And if people would, and I learned, like it was a learning experience. Maybe in the beginning, to please people, I would still talk about the surgeries and the chemo.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt my body and I felt myself. And after a while, I was like, no, I won't talk even in the beginning, after the chemo, when people would walk in the street and be very surprised to see me, and they would be, oh my God, and how are you now? And I really wanted to always to bring the dialogue
Mm-hmm.
in a positive now moment. I didn't really want to look back all of the time. Now it's easy for me. It's 17 years ago.
Yeah.
And now, like I'm talking about the empowering lessons I had from that experience. It was absolutely a blessing in disguise. Absolutely. And I think that's important for listeners. If you are in a mess right now in your life, whether it's relationships, business, health, bless it. There is a lesson somewhere there for you.
And I
Absolutely.
love that too, and I love that even that is a choice, right? To see the
Yes.
blessing within it. So my curiosity is, when did you know it was a blessing? During, or how long after? Like, when did you start seeing it that way, or were you always that way from the beginning?
Very quickly. I saw it very quickly. Um, from Because it made me think also so much about my legacy. Being faced to death, like really faced to death, put so much things in the right perspective immediately.
Hmm.
Immediately, like in a second. People say you see your life, it's more like everything is put into perspective. Now I almost never sweat the small stuff. Like if there is not enough food in the fridge, well, we get, like all the little things.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening the news. I rarely listen to the news, and I was hearing like in the news a whole fuss because children have to learn from house,
Mm-hmm.
and the online system was not, like really well, and it was like all the time like negative, like.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my God, I will shut this down. I
Yeah.
don't want to hear how they are repeating how things go wrong, and it's not that I'm blind. I'm
Yeah.
not blind for reality. I have been in, you could say, in the shit enough to know that it exists.
Mm-hmm.
For me, being in a dark place in my life always has been an invitation to shine my light
Wow.
and not be pulled by the dark. Be
And you
stronger.
mentioned you mentioned earlier with the legacy, but this is even more powerful. Like, it's not just about knowing the things that are important in life and really
Mm-hmm.
having those priorities set, but you touched on something that goes even deeper on that, is your internal being, who you are, your light, your character shining. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes. Um, that was probably why I see it as the biggest blessing. So at
Mm.
32, until 32, I had been living a life, you could say, of someone else.
Mm.
I had been living the life that was, I thought was expected from me.
Mm.
You go through college, you meet someone, you marry. I started a construction business because I wanted to be a business owner, and my parents always had their entire life construction business. So I knew that. And in listening
Mm-hmm.
so much to that voice that, like you could say, the voice of society, the voice of other people, the voice of your parents, the voice of your peers, the voice of your teachers.
Mm-hmm.
that's an illusion. That, like, that doesn't exist. It's something you think you
Mm-hmm.
have to do. So at 32, I was thinking, okay, if I die right now,
Mm-hmm.
would I be happy with what I left behind, with my legacy? The answer was no, I wouldn't be happy, because a part of the spark of Barbara
Mm-hmm.
had been dulled by so-called adult life, like the responsibilities, and you make choices because you think you have to make money, and the making money comes before the passion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it, like it, and I was like, oh my God, no,
And
this
it
is not.
shifted though, and I want to
Yeah.
pause here real quick because there's an important thing that I've observed when meeting you. Right, obviously I met you 16,
Mm-hmm.
17 years after the incident, but typically in this inflection point, some people who have similar revelations turn
Mm-hmm.
into more of a selfish ambition in life, and they shift into focusing on me. They might cut past relationships and focus just on them.
Oh,
But
oh,
in regards to what I've seen with you,
oh
like you
no.
still kept the fruitful relationship with your husband. You still, even
Yes,
the
yes,
relationship with your children, you not only
absolutely.
were in business
Um,
for longer, but even had new businesses come out of this, right? So you
yes,
didn't shift it
yes.
in just Barbara focused, but Barbara focused for others.
If you if you look, if you talk really about legacy, like
Mm-hmm.
if you talk about legacy, if you talk about the greatest people in history who left a legacy, it was never ever centered
Mm.
in their personality. Never ever. It was always centered on serving. Always. Those people are remembered.
That's powerful.
Not those who like had selfish goals. Um, so for me, you could say my mission, because you have met me, I'm like a woman on a mission. um, my most important mission is to lead with love, kindness, and compassion. Many times in life I have been called too kind, too nice, and
Mm-hmm.
that I will never be successful with being so nice and kind. And it made me think often, but there is an enormous power in kindness,
Mm-hmm.
in a certain maturity, when you have a certain calmness, and other people might be rude, emotional, angry, like aggressive, and you can stay out of
Of
that.
that, yep.
You stay clear and calm. It's not like you're a doormat at that moment
No,
at
it's
all.
less of self-collection. It's more powerful to do that. It's actually harder
Yes,
because it takes more self-control and
yes,
self-will.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
that's self-control. And really bringing into the world, a world which is so often so over dramatized, so ego driven, and bring a fresh and other message. For me, it's simply it's future of humanity. When I
Mm.
think, like, for businesses, I do not think in terms of competition, of putting others down. I'm always thinking about connection, about support, about supporting someone else. Like really rising by lifting others.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the future of a mature humanity. Humanity now is in its adolescence. If you see, like, the big polarity, the
Oh
black
yeah,
and
yeah.
white.
I've heard that before. Yeah.
Now, like an adolescent, everything is black white. There is no in between. They love
Mm-hmm.
you, they hate you, they love that. Like they're left, they're right. So we have to grow through that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you said you're in a marriage, we had to grow through certain challenges too,
Yeah.
because
And challenges
after,
help you grow too. Like you can't grow
yes,
without
after
them.
the cancer, I did change, and my husband, like, for him it was not always easy to be married almost to another woman. but we worked ourselves through it. And I can say we're married for more than 21 years now. We're together for 24. Our marriage had never been more harmonious, loving, like that deep understanding. I think the acceptance, the understanding, and the loving no matter what, but based on respect.
That's huge.
And it's also, like reaching a certain maturity in your relationships.
And that bleeds over to everything in your life, because it's not a duality between me, work, family, personal, fitness, health, fine. It's all one. You're one person.
Yes.
You're one person.
What I have in like the past years with my business really booming, that without the inner growth, like really leveling it up is difficult. It's always combined. If you're like, let's say you make a 500,000 a year, your company, you go to 1 million to 5 million, there is within you growth is required.
Yeah.
And it will always, in those moments of growth, you will be confronted with what you haven't dealt yet. Whether it's in your relationships, in your health, in your, like it really,
true, yeah.
And in growing through that, you are ready for the next level. But it's, like it demands courage to look so honestly at yourself, to have that. And I think working with coaches, mentors help you a lot. I'm working with coaches, mentors, you do.
Yeah, no, it's huge. It's essential, because you mentioned that, and I think it was very subtle when you talked about it, but it was when you grow your business to different levels of revenue growth, whatever it is, team size, that growth happens in time.
Yes.
Linearly, because we have to go through time as humans, right? But as we go through time, we also experience different obstacles, hurdles, or whatever, life may throw at us, what we have to overcome. And through that, we have to have our own personal growth. If it's health, if it's family, if it's even with other teammates or business, it's not always going to be one simple line of problems or one simple line of challenges coming through, right?
Absolutely not.
And then also, like you mentioned, having not only just going by yourself, you shouldn't ever go by yourself. It's either your spouse, your friend, significant other, or also, mentors, coaches, peers, networks, masterminds, like going through it together. And I think that's even a huge thing that we're seeing now in today's age. But it's also, it doesn't have to end with, which is one event. We're in this together for every event. Depends on how extended or how outreaching or how open you are to receiving help. And first, accepting you need help, and two, reaching out for help. Right? That's the biggest thing.
Yes, absolutely. I have to say that I think each, the bigger your success comes, I'm always stressing, like, be an amazing human being first.
Or be the amazing you, like who you are. Right?
Yes, be the amazing you. And it radiates, like you radiate something that it magnetizes. People are drawn to you. But in my case, I overcame a lot in my, like the obstacles, which we all have, those weaknesses, those triggers that we really have to dive deep into. I shed many tears, nights alone in my couch here, that I was like, oh my God. But okay, in going through, in having that courage to face yourself, or to, like if you have been running away for months or even years from a certain situation, whether it was with my parents-in-law or it was with one of my siblings, you have to face it. One day you cannot keep running away from things.
Exactly. And you have to face reality face to face, and that is uncomfortable. Sometimes you resist that.
Yes,
I'm
and or
slowly
even
learning to face what
yes,
I resist initially, right? So
yes, absolutely. And maybe it's overeating, maybe it's an issue in your relationships, maybe you spend too much money, you numb yourself with something else, and you it's something you and I know, but if you go to 7-figure, 8-figure, it's a whole certain kind of routines and habits and how your life looks like. So
mm-hmm.
you cannot stay in a place of 5 or 6 figures and expect the 7 of, like the
Well,
habits.
with business growth, yeah, exactly,
Yes, you
exactly. There
have
has
to
to
grow
be.
as a human being. Your life looks differently. My life looks differently now than even when I had my construction business. You grow, and the world changes, and you have to adapt. And
Mm-hmm.
but I think a certain you build resilience with surviving quite some stuff and not sweating the small stuff anymore.
I love that summation, but it's beautiful to see and hear your story about that. I know that others going through any difficulty, may or may not relate directly to health, but I like some of the key takeaways that I got that I wrote. So I have like a couple
Mm-hmm.
note cards already from this just live, speaking with you, Barbara. But essentially, where can listeners learn a little bit more about you or get in contact with you to learn more about your story and other challenges that you faced, or where they can learn more about your programs, or what do you do?
Most easy thing is to go to my website,
Mm-hmm.
maybe. That's startalifeofyourdreams.com. So
Okay.
start a life of your dreams in one word. Or through LinkedIn. I'm
And I'll put
quite,
both of those links on the show
yes, I'm
notes so people can
quite
reach out easily.
active on LinkedIn. I think those two are the easiest ways to connect with me, to see, what I bring into the world.
So Barbara, to close off, I have one quick question for you. And what would you say to someone who's going through a hardship right now? If it's business, relationship, health, whatever it is, what would be the one thing you would tell them?
Start with counting your blessings, always.
It's that simple.
Yes, it's that simple. We overcomplicate. It's our mind who overcomplicates so much. But you shift your mind to the positive once you start to count your blessings. You have your eyes, you have your ears. And I know how cliche this sounds,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the day that you miss all of that. And I hope you never have to miss it before you, like taking things for granted is the beginning of, unhappiness.
Well, Barbara, thank you so much for being on. It's an absolute pleasure to have you.
It was an honor and a pleasure for me too, Raul.